So this is sketchbook 1, initial design development and branding. This is the start of my summer work. So I started the concept as backstory, which is all about accepting what you have been through and asymmetric sort of silhouettes, basing it off scoliosis and the juxtaposition between the imperfect and the perfect. I started looking at brand names, and because it was about me, but then also looking at so I wanted to call it AMELIA, but then I thought actually I don't really want it to be named after me, so I called it Zinni, which was meant to be like delicate and but also represents strength, which is Zinni as a flower. I then went on to research this and do more design logo development. I then looked at sustainable development goals through responsible consumption and production, goal 12. I then looked at other brands and how positive luxury brands to trust and who was involved in that and where I sort of was on the matrix. And I started looking at collaging and brand boards and what I wanted my brand to represent. Full of life, colour, community, positivity, but also wanted it to be a lot of like craft, print and texture. So I started looking at route to market and promotional ideas, did some collaging for sort of brand boards. I did some development of drawings for my brand and what my ethos sort of meant. Again, sort of what Zinni meant, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, more collaging, then did logo development. This was a store layout and how I wanted a store to be really colourful and vibrant. And I went on to look at my customer and their profile, where they lived, what they liked doing. Also for promotional ideas, I was looking at Her Collective and what they do, and obviously you can rent from their platform. Again, more development on the brand and the logo, and then promotional ideas, QR codes to sort of get people to see how sustainable it is, but also a book at the end of the season about where it's come from, what's made out of. I then did this cracker development, which I thought was quite fun. Idea of having a promotional piece, instead of having a sort of fixed little box, it would be a cracker, and you'd have like a sewing needle and a few threads and buttons which came with your piece to be able to sort of fix it and rewear it again. I also looked at my passport Zinni profile, so going back to the Her Collective and looking at how each person who's part of the brand can have their own passport and their style and 3 key wardrobes and what their favourite design is, and then people can almost like rent it from each other. I mean, this is for further promotional ideas in the future. I then looked at other brands like Cecily Banson and how they keep sustainable and responsible. This is shop report, so I went to Selfridges, Valentino, more shop report, Cecily Banson, Kepler. Again, I looked at Zimmerman and saw how they are responsible and sustainable. More research, market research, so Simone Rocha, Zimmerman, Sakai, Moncler, collab with Simone Rocha. Then it went on to design development and how I started wanting in the summer how my collection, I visualised my collection. So I'll go back to the beginning. This is my initial sort of mood board. of the imperfect perfect, waiting for adolescence, contortion, distortion, ballet but being tied down, print research, Zandra Rhodes. Again, more print research, Hedda Hansen, her dancing and how she would make shapes out of movement. Just a bit of research on what is scoliosis, the treatments, and how it works and how you can have the operation. The history of the back brace, looking into the brace and sort of looking at how I can turn that into something which is unobvious and can be represented in like a little waistcoat or through knit. There's the scoliosis braces and corsetry and relating the two, and how the contrast we used to wear corsets and they used to sort of morph your body into a different shape, which was the same as a back brace, which used to help your back from abnormal shapes. The spine, again more corsetry. I went to a museum in Barcelona and saw research and silhouette of dresses throughout the time from the 1800s until now, and contrasting that with back braces and corsetry. I then also looked at volume and silhouette of the skirts in the Design Museum in Barcelona, and looked at this in a more contemporary way, like Cicely Manson and Simone Rocha, and how they got this sort of contortion lines, which relates to the back brace. And then this was my initial silhouette ideas. So this is my sketchbook to branding. So I started off by looking at label inspiration and swing tag interactive labels. You can see here I was looking at quite textural ones, Japanese inspired brands, and I really wanted them to sort of feel and look fun and different, and something that the consumer could interact with. This is some brand logo development, initial. And then I decided to go back to my brand Tukai, which is the same name from the year before. However, I've changed the ethos slightly. So it is still Goal 12 responsible consumption. It's about craftsmanship, volume, community. Twice for good means restoration and recovery in Japanese. And obviously I still want to have this sort of promotional pieces which act as twice for good, the brand ethos, so you can use them for more than one thing, like packaging, and also to use for everyday life. So pestle analysis, more pestle work, my initial Tukai swing tags, which I did digitally, some more, and then I started looking at Tukai and how I'm going to show the logo, my brand ethos, initial brand ethos, more ways of my Tukai logo. And then I started looking at the Japanese art of packaging called Setsumu. It basically is when you use anything to sort of package up, anything from the everyday norm to package up things. And it's a really nice way to, I thought, to take inspiration for a swing tag, but also for promotional pieces. So I started doing different swing tags, and basically I put in different letters, and then you can basically, the needle go here and then you can sew through the holes and create a name, I thought it was quite a fun way of just having a different swing tag. And then here, this long one was inspired by the Satsumu brand branding and like the meaning behind it. I said I used different materials like recyclable cards, normal card, different types of linens, so using like end of line fabrics from my collection, and actually I got different weights of linen by bonding, so I used 2 different types of bonding. I also used cardboard just to see different weights. I then looked further into Satsumu and found furoshiki wrapping, which is the traditional Japanese method of using cloth to wrap up and transport gifts, or really anything at all. Which I thought was a really like nice different way, and again representing my ethos of twice good. And so basically I looked further into this. Here's more development of my logo and swing tag. I then looked at my brand values and like what they would be, so craftsmanship, responsible, unique, quality and longevity, playful, community and transparent. And sort of like different backgrounds for it to look fun and not boring for consumers. I started then looking more in depth at multi-purpose branding, promotional pieces like Capital, where they have a bag and a coat all in one. Just some research drawings. I then went into the Satsumu and furoshiki packaging and practiced it myself and how I could use it. Again, I started looking at headscarf development and how I could use the same scarf I've used for packaging for a headscarf or a handkerchief or a neckerchief. More brand development of the logo for Tukai. I then decided to go more down a graphic route on Illustrator, and then this was my initial board, and you can see the initial logo development. This is my customer. About more customer drawings, and then my brand values, again next to the shop and the store which I want to have, which is going to be like very interactive with the consumer, and it'll be all about each season we'll have a exhibition on to sort of celebrate an artist, obviously this season and celebrating Japanese crafts, so it'll be sort of alongside that. And then this is my brand swing tags, which obviously are quite big, but I thought quite fun because for this concept about the imperfect perfect. So I thought that was quite a fun idea. As you can see, the thread and a needle, and then you put it through. But yeah, they're quite fun and really big. Just experimentation. Then I started looking at route to market and the future of the brand, website, how I would sort of get out there. Then I started looking more into depth how I do this headscarf. So I started looking at screen printing it, and I made it in organza and silk, which you can see here, which was, I kind of liked it because it wasn't completely perfect. It was screen printed, so you do have the rough edges, but actually I guess that goes the imperfect perfect theme. But I also thought I will sublimation print it just to see how it would be as well. And these are my final prints, which would be made from dead stock fabric from the end of the collection. And these are the examples of it. There's this one, and this one as well. Then some customer drawings for houses. My initial route to market, so looking at posters and websites, and how the customers would sort of find Tukai, looking at pop-ups and store layouts, my drawings, and then I drew a more in-depth drawing of what my store would be and how I'd be able to have it as a art exhibition at the same time as a store for the opening of the collection. Sketchbook 1, Product Research and Development. So I started off looking at wabi-sabi and how the Japanese have an attitude and philosophy of the imperfect and perfect. I then went on to look at kintsugi and the Japanese representation of broken pottery and the asymmetry, looking at the asymmetry of life. I then went on to look at different designers like Comme des Garçons, which and Ray Kawakubo, who's represented this, as well as Victor and Rolf. Again, looking at Comme des Garçons and looking at rounded shapes and how the sort of morphing the body into different shapes. And then more asymmetrical design through collaging and looking at straps and how this can be represented. I then went on to spinal vertebrae influence and moulaging, looking at how vertebrae can be represented through moulage. This was then taken from vertebrae and research, and I actually found a whalebone in Scotland, where I thought was a good starting point. This one I then did more rounded shapes and collaging, asymmetrical collars as well. And then started looking at details of trims and knit and lacing. This is also researched through Simone Rocha market research and competitors. I then went on to look at how I can represent this through knit, and how I could show like the rib cage of the body in a more like delicate way. So I did this through knit and moulage. More knit sampling to get this representation. Again, more moulage and through laddering to get the ribcage effect. I then looked at asymmetrical shapes and vases and sculptures, which was to represent the scoliosis of the curvature in the spine. Again, more moulage. Looked at market research for texture and print. And then I went on to look at historical garments, so I was looking at the Victorian era, especially looking at like beading, embroidery, smocking and applique. And I really like this modern version of macramé. I also looked at Discovery Museum archive, waistcoats, lace. Then I went on to look at sleeve detail to get lots of volume and like excessive volume, excessive length, and how I can mix that with lace and also knit. I then looked at dancers and how they have a persona of being perfect when actually they really let go when they dance, and actually it's not all just perfect, it can be the imperfect perfect. I was looking at layering when they dance and the overlapping. I then took from previous years of photo shoots of dancing just to take a silhouette of movement and silhouette. I also then looked at distortion and contortion through mirroring, and that went on to looking at kintsugi through plates. I did this by breaking a plate and filling it with gold, which obviously gold glue, and this was basically the representation of feeling tied down, but refiguring that through gold, which is obviously accepting our scars, accepting the imperfect perfect. This is more market research, Victor and Rolf, Molly Goddard, just for the volume. I then started looking at trench coat and dresses, and did some collaging of that. I then did some moulage on a mini mannequin of all my samples and put them together with like pleating, knit, texture, just to get an idea of scale of print, but also scale of what I wanted from where. I did some drawing over the top. That's the moulage. More development drawing. And silhouette drawings from my collages. Which then went into more collaging for dresses, and putting my print on top and all using my moulage to create this silhouettes. Which then went into initial sketches and initial silhouette ideas. Carried on to Discovery Museum archive of lace and channeled areas, ribbing. Also then, this is development of my look 1 of my dress toile. So this is toile 1. And it was sort of just getting the volume through moulage and adding my print, how much volume I wanted. I started with the skirt to get how many layers I wanted. I thought this was quite a nice representation of a modern contemporary piece. And yeah, just more moulage and drawing. This is colour up development of final look. I then started looking at what knit trims I wanted through shop reports, and what would work best to match with the dress for the bodice. This is Fennett's research, knit trims. And this is more volume on the sleeves for the top half of the dress, just to see how I wanted the sleeve, if I wanted them extra long, extra puffy, and gathering techniques. Collar research for a adjustable, like put on, take off collar from Fennett's. Again, more pleating research for how it will be done, and drawing over my toile 1, and more development. So this is sketchbook 2, product research and development. So just carrying on with colour swatch development and looking at greens, blues, and seeing what I can use to take forward. Coat and trench coat development, close-up details and shop report. My first toile development, looking at the length of the panels, the ruching and smocking. Bodice development, so looking at the seams, I had to take it in as it was too baggy, and my first toile into my second toile. More smocking development, and looking at how much volume I wanted and potential print ideas on top of smocking. Trim details and development, so looking at laces and laces on shop reports and how I do the smocking. Also adjustable collar research. More sleeve development, getting that sort of bell shape and puff sleeve, which again I put gauze in to be able to, or netting to be able to get that shape for the real thing. Final trial development, with and without sleeves. This is with the bodice taken in. Knit development and yarn, choosing yarns and choosing different techniques like laddering and what trim I wanted to use, and then the process of making my knit toile bodice. 12 photo shoot, just looking at the volume and seeing how much I can get with movement. Smocking development and research for other looks, and then looking at vintage doilies and lace doilies to be able to use in the sleeve detail, which I thought was more authentic than just buying new lace. Historic trouser research, Victorian trouser development, contemporary references, trim details, looking at historic Victorian embellishment as well as modern. More collar development, for attachable collars, so buttoned on, tied on or sewn on, which wouldn't be attachable. And then applique and coat embroidery development, so you can see my own embroidery here. And then manipulation of fabric, so elastic shirring, and then the gathered whole. I looked at Pattern Magic book for my other look in my lineup. And then finally development of final print, full scale, as I did 4 or 5 of the full scale print, and then my chosen print on the stand and choosing different colour blues. So this is the design development of my lineup. My final look, design development, initial. Knit overlay on top of the dress, the bodice, and how it's going to be made. Back of top development. Top development again. My initial range plan. Coat development. More coat development with a cut-out hole detail. Skirt development. Dress development. More range planning. Skirt and trouser development and short development. Coat and jacket initial development. More coat and jacket development. Print development on my chosen design. More print development with adjustable collars. Skirt development and shirt development. Shorts and skirt development. More print development of my chosen design. More development of my lineup. More initial development. and then go into my lineup. The watercolour underneath the lineup. And then more development before I did my lineup. Just initial development. So this is my process journal for pattern cutting. Skirt measurements, lacing, ruching, print development, swatches of paint, my first twirl and pattern cutting, looking at how I'm going to be ruching and smocking, how I was doing slashing and flaring, and again more ruching. Amendments and how the sleeve works, looking at how to turn the seams inside out, sleeve details, more print development, colours, more print development of how the bodice and how it look on a stand in large scale, bodice smocking, lace detail, collars for attachable collars, choosing samples for print, final week of twirl making, smocking process, and knit measurements. So this is a fabric sample book. So I started collecting different samples of knits, different weights. I was looking at sort of lightweight layering pieces and satins and silks. Then these are the ones which I collected myself. Again, a bit more lace to add, and poplins and satins. Lots of different lightweight, some technical ones. More satins and silks, as well as some with silver and gold threads going through. Some organza. And then these were final fabrics which I started collecting, so linens of different weights. From Merchant Mills, and then from Whaley's I started looking at poplins and linens, drills, and heavyweight cottons and lightweight cottons. These are some of the chosen ones I have. And then I looked at more laces and linens, which I thought were nice, but decided to get ones which from Lace Doilies. It was more vintage, sustainable and authentic. And then just more textures and pleats, which I can print on top of. So this is a texture and initial print book. So I obviously started looking at Zandra Road for the beginning of my print research, and how she used like florals and neons but in an untraditional way. I started using mixed media and layering, pastels and pens and paint, more neon flowers and gridding. I also used Print Experiment just to see how I could sort of get those X-ray looks and neon lights which are related to the spine and X-ray inspiration, looking at the scoliosis. And then in a less obvious way and a bit more floral, I also looked at the nervous system and how you could use that through ink and paper. Again, more nervous system, and then spinal research and florals, initial prints. You get textures of knit, and I scan those in. Look at kintsugi and how I can get that through knit and gold and different threads. Again, more print, development, and my initial colour swatches. Again, more knit materials. And then I started painting with random objects, floras, and so this is left-handed painting, painting flowers with a flower and textures. Fingerprinting to get that sort of childlike, naive feel. Printing with this floral, with objects, and then again getting that kintsugi lines. So this is my print sketchbook. So this is a beginning to just colour research and what sort of print I wanted to do. I know I wanted it to be quite floral and full of life and quite bold. I also wanted it to go with some knit, so I tried different techniques like laddering and stripes. So I was just matching the colours up to see how that would look. I then carried on doing different stripes and different gauges on the knit machine and different techniques. I then went to the Baltic and looked at the exhibition which was on Ad Minoliti, using geometry and colour and shapes to represent like children play and like no specific category, gender, age or ethnicity. So I thought that was quite a nice way of seeing shapes and colour without being like obvious and sort of the imperfect, perfect way that children draw. I thought was something I could look into. So I got my cousins to draw some pictures of whatever they wanted. They're 5 and 6, just to see how that would work and what shapes I could get from them. I then went on to look at the kintsugi plate smashing and then putting it back together, accepting your scars. And I took this and put it into my print and blew it up so the scale was bigger, so it was less obvious to see what it was. This was then using the print samples, looking at different colours. I knew I wanted to do quite bold, but it was getting those shapes. This was from the drawings, they were rainbows from my cousins, which I then put into flowers. This is more of the rainbows which I made into flowers, so it's just imperfect shapes. More kintsugi research. I then started looking at Japanese blue and white pottery and some ceramics, because I thought they had some really pretty florals, and I really like the blue and white colour scheme. Obviously this is a different colour scheme. It was like shapes which I could take out of there and use, especially like these sort of ones. So I started drawing my own from inspiration from the Japanese pottery. As well as drawing florals and printing florals You can see I started to go into more pinks, blues and greens. More florals, using different line weights and also looking at different times the flowers are around, so when they're more decayed and less fresh, whereas here these are much more fresh flowers. We get peonies and parrot peonies, which are much bigger, tulips with long stems. This was a print I did. I also did some print on knit to see what the texture was like. Again, taking inspiration from flowers, but also from the ceramics. Here's some more knit. I've seen what flowers look like in the knit, and also different gauges on the knit for my bodice. I then wanted to use different layering, so I was looking at transparent and opaque. Again, more peonies and hydrangeas and dahlias. I then started using gold foil to get a highlight colour. This then was the beginning of my chosen colour palette, so gold, pinks, Bordeaux, sort of magenta colour and blues. Looking at Japanese flowers, again, more foiling. And using different line weights, so thicker ones and thinner ones with the gold foil on top. We then started printing on top of smocking, as well as printing then smocking, just to see the different way the print came out. So you can see here it's sort of gappy, which I really like, the uneven and like imperfect way it printed. I also tried smocking with elastic, just to see the difference, rather than using the pleating machine, the Princess Pleater, and also on different material. Again, more pleating, elastic, and then not elastic, just pleating with an iron. Again, more development into ceramics and florals. And then started taking my colour palette also from these books, which have more close-up details of Japanese florals and ceramics. Some colour development chips. I then went on to look at Japanese stamp development and the different stamps you could get. And I ordered some off eBay and thought they were really interesting, the vintage ones which had been used, as I like the sort of stamp mark they had on them. So these are the chosen stamps I used in the end for my colour inspiration. And then this is my chosen print development, so choosing different blues and what sort of worked best. Looking at green and blues and stamps, and like the uneven sort of linear, quite like, no, it is very even, sort of perfect linear, good for lino print. And then this was just a separation ink screen printing for colourful prints, which are a bit more uneven and experimental, and just the process, as well as using different opaque and transparent inks. So these are more print samples. Devoro. Printing on texture, applique. Printing on different materials. This is using the separation ink, colourful printing. So this is my final print development in full scale in different colourways. This is knit. Using different trims. Embroidery on knit. More laddering development. I'm using different weights as well as putting different yarns in. Smocking. I've got lacing samples. Using a pleater. This is smocking using elastic after it's been printed. This is printing after it's been pleated. Using silks and chiffons. Using opaque and transparent. And again, using elastic. My final textiles and prints. Embroidery on print. Knit. Smocking. So full scale with embroidery. And my final chosen print for my look one.